is going on, family? It's your boy, Low Daddy, back again with another episode of Teach Us Something Cool. Now, Teach Us Something Cool, it's like a book club, but for learning cool shit. And we do this every single Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time over on Clubhouse. If you're not on Clubhouse and you need an invite, reach out to me by leaving a comment below on YouTube or on any of my social profiles. I'm more than happy to spread the wealth with you if I have any invites to give that week. So how it works is every week we have a new topic to learn and discuss set by our panel and the members of our community over on Discord. If you'd like to join our Discord to enhance your learning experience, I would encourage you to do so by clicking on the link tree in the description of any YouTube videos we have, in the description of our YouTube in general, or any of my social media profile bios. It's going to be in there as well. So you can do that for free. Definitely encourage you to do so. Hope to see you all there in the future, and I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation, which is going to be on whatever the title says below. And again, if you're on YouTube watching this, please smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, and ring the little bell next to it so you get notified every time we go live, every time we drop new videos, and we're learning something cool up in here, which should be at least once a week moving forward, and I hope to get more consistent than that moving forward as well. But for now, enjoy this video and let me know what you think in the comment section below.
Recording this chat, so don't say anything that you wouldn't want to be put on the internet for. This is the Fermi paradox. Why haven't aliens visited us yet? And where are the aliens? Mike, take it away.
Actually, Connor, the cleaning people just got here, so you take it away while I tell them not to vacuum.
All right. Been waiting on the cleaning people for a minute now. They're supposed to show up at 8:30. Turns out they're a little late. Or I think they're supposed to show up at 8. Well, anyway, I know we got a couple guys in here who are knowledgeable on the topic. I heard Ivan's the real deal. Carson's going to talk heavily on it. But basically, the overarching idea of the Fermi paradox is there's a number of different theories of why we haven't ran into aliens or if they're out there. Carson, you want to give a quick overview of what we are looking at here?
Yeah, sure, man. So, thanks for having me again. Super fun last time. First and foremost, I'm not an expert on this topic at all. I just think it's incredibly interesting. It's something that I learned about in a physics class in college, and it's one of those things that I just keep thinking about. It's I think it's one of those conversations where you can always kind of get different viewpoints and discuss it. So anyway, the Fermi paradox, named after Enrico Fermi, basically it's the contradiction or the paradox between the fact that there is clearly no evidence of actual aliens or intelligent life yet up until this point in history, but mathematically there must be some kind of other life out there, right? There are billions of stars in the galaxy that are like our sun that could obviously support life. Unfortunately, we can't reach them, for the most part. We can only reach like a fraction of a decimal point of what's known in the universe. So really, kind of the juxtaposition between there definitely should be something out there, and we have no proof that there is. And then also kind of one element to that, which to me, we'll get into it, but the most interesting part of that is, the theory that the, intelligent life out there or our own planet would inherently become so advanced and intelligent that so would their weaponry and their ability to fight and blow things up. So we may ultimately never be able to reach other life because, like almost happened in the Cold War, we'll get too advanced for our own good and create our own destruction, basically our own demise, without ever actually going beyond. So but like you said, there's multiple theories that deal with it, but to me that's my favorite part of it. But yeah, there's a kind of a
right segue right off that, Carson, or what you're describing there, I think is the technical term for it is the great filter, or different types of great filters.
Yep.
Which are the plausible explanations of, well, the answers to the question, where are the aliens? One of them being if these great filters are actually if there are far more risky great filters on the horizon than even nuclear weapons were. Maybe we just don't know about them yet, and maybe our civilization is going to go extinct before, and that's the reason. I guess that's the most depressing take of the couple of there, but sadly, I think also one of the most probable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Can I take us down rabbit hole number one?
Do it.
All right, cool. So we talk about mass extinction events, right, that are air quotes great filters. One of the links that I sent to the Discord pretty recently was something I watched while I was cooking dinner the other night. This guy, and Lo, you're going to love this. I absolutely cannot stand it. But this guy relates all of these mass extinction events back to, you guessed it, astrological signs and horoscopes.
Oh, no. Wow. That hits home.
No way.
Dead serious. Dead serious. Hear me out, right? So this guy, and I'm going to say that he's a justifiable source because he's older, he's got a long beard, pretty wispy, thin hair, so he's obviously spent a lot of time researching this, which means absolutely nothing, and this could be complete and total bullshit. But this guy says, okay, there's this theory called the Great Year, theorized by Plato, which essentially says that every, I think it's 25,000 years, the Earth ends up in the exact same place along its axis, along the orbit of the sun, about every 25,000 years. I think it's 25,000 something, 260 or whatever it is. Anyway, those 4 years, or that circle, I guess you can call it, can be divided into 4 quadrants. Now, those 4 quadrants, as we've seen, if you look at like a zodiac sign chart, or an astrological sign chart, right? All that shit can be broken up by like Leo, Taurus, and all of those. I'm going to send a picture to the Discord right now. And he goes through and he looks back at about, I think it's 700,000 years of what is human evolution or planetary evolution. And his main topic is, why is there no record of ancient civilization, ancient humans? Well, when you plot those massive events that he's come up with as air quotes catastrophic or civilization-ending events, they occur on a pretty regular interval. Now, here's where it gets weird. These air quotes catastrophic events are something that would, as he describes, wipe out 1,000 major cities at one time. So essentially something that humans could not recover from. Otherwise, it'd be like a fallout, desolate wasteland type of thing. But those catastrophic events happen roughly every 12,000 years. I'm going to send this picture right now. Give me a hot second. This one. There we go. They happen about every 12,000 years, and you can find this picture in the links and resources on the Discord. And it's terrifying because they all line up on the 4 quadrants every 12,000 years. Some 6,000, some 6,000, 12,000, or 25,000 years. And I shit you not, it's absolutely terrifying. This guy goes in to talk about the start of the Ice Age, the end of the Ice Age, the last great extinction. He goes to talk about Noah's flood, all of the great stories of disaster that have happened in the past. And he goes way back farther than that. I think it's like 700,000 years is his timeline. But when I look at it, it's anything that would have, it was last 150,000 years. When I look at it, I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Connor mentioned that website in the links and resources in the Discord as well, from that Kyrgyzstan YouTube channel. And last year as well, I got into their wormhole on YouTube. And they had this theory that what we need to do as a society is change the year from 2017, this was back 5 years ago, 4 years ago, from 2017 to 12,017. Because essentially, this modern age of humans is about 10,000 years older than we give it credit for. We give it 2017 based off of biblical references and all that, but realistically, the modern human age is about 12,000 years old. So you can put 2 and 2 together there, but it's scary. If you actually want to do a little bit more digging on that, I would highly suggest
watching the videos that I sent in the Discord, it'll throw you for a loop. And those two things alone, maybe a past civilization discovered aliens. Maybe in Earth's giant, the planet's lifetime, there were aliens here at one point, but we might have missed them. I don't know.
I have a question for you, Travis. That's a really interesting idea. Definitely not one that I've ever heard before, and definitely going to check out those links that you sent in the Discord. But yeah, I'm wondering if is there any description of what the actual causation might be relating the 12,000 year event to actually causing the disaster on Earth, or is it really just looking at the correlation between the events and the time period?
It's a big step. No direct correlation, but they match up almost synchronously every 6,000 or so years. The whole circle being 25,000 years. It's about once every quadrant on the quadrant. I just sent that picture. It's kind of scary. So, for example, if you look at, I believe, what is that? At the beginning of the age of Leo, there were 3 large climate shifts at 144,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, and 117,000 years ago. For example, the Toba super eruption, which I'm going to imagine is probably a volcano, happened at the beginning of the age of Scorpio. So it's like, as much as I hate to say it, Lo, even those astrological signs, those horoscope signs, they might be onto something.
Oh yeah, king of astrology right here, baby. Make Scorpios great again. I've got this image open though on the computer. I'm trying to understand it. You want to walk me, or anyone who's on Discord, you can pull this picture up too and follow along. You want to walk us through that really quick? I know you're just giving us a brief rundown, but I'm trying to follow because the numbers gonna go all over.
If you haven't joined the Discord yet, it's in Mike's bio, so it's super easy. And if you don't have a Discord, it's super easy. It's like making that.
So for those of you who aren't, I'm going to try and paint you a good picture. Imagine your circle on a plane, and you cut it into, 12 spots, just like your spots on the clock. Now, every number replace it with a different astrological sign, and this guy goes to talk about different events that happened and when they happened, and when that would align with the beginning of astrology and Plato's great year of 25,000 years. So basically, this guy went and mapped all of the main events that occur. So, for example, there's 5 major events that occurred on the 12 o'clock, 1 major event that occurred at the 3 o'clock, 3 major events that occurred at the 6 o'clock, and 1 major event that occurred at the 9 o'clock. So based off of where he started that astrological sign and went 25,000 years around and around and around, there have been so many events that occur pretty regularly, with other data points that correlate to the beginning of these astrological seasons. Astrological seasons being thousands of years rather than just Leo season of whatever month that is. So it's kind of a lot, and it's very disorganized, and not how I would have done it, but it's a very cool picture for those of you who aren't taking a look at it. I would highly suggest it. You can also find, if you want to look up the YouTube, it was Why Is There No Record of Ancient Humans? And you got to go to about, I think it's 8.5 minutes in.
And so when are we due for our next event?
Well, so if you do the math on that, there was a Kyrgyzstan, that channel was saying, oh yeah, ancient or modern human era is about 10,000 years older than we give it credit for, and we're at 12,000 years since the start of the last ice age, and as we've seen with probably, I'd say 50% or more of those events being climate change related, you could say we're pretty par for the course in the next, I'd say 100 years or so, but it's all theory, big step here, but I don't know, I mean, if you could see the Earth, the world, the planet, human civilization ending in the next 100 years, I'd say it's not too far off.
Well, y'all ever see that video? I think it's from, I can't remember if it's from 1989 or if it's from late 2000s. So I'm getting two events mixed up, of that meteor passing right through, I can't remember where in Russia, and you can see it. Like this thing is hauling through the sky and just barely misses the Earth. And they said that it was bigger than the asteroid that hit Earth when the dinosaurs were there, and if it would have actually hit, it would have been like 30 times the force of the bombs we set off at Hiroshima. Um, so something like that, like a meteor or an asteroid hitting, could be one filter again, where the dinosaurs couldn't do it. Can the humans do it? I mean, I don't have any evidence that suggests we could do it, but um, yeah, that could be one thing that just ends us within. I don't know how much time it would take to end us, but it'd be quick.
And if we wanted to circle back to those great filters, I mean, that's what we've seen on this planet in this planet's short history of, I think our planet's like 4 billion years old. The universe is however many years old. I might be wrong on how old our planet is. I don't remember. I'm pulling that number out.
Something I just wanted to say, looking at that picture with the astrology-related similarities, the fact that they have the Scorpios, me being a fellow Scorpio, like low,
Oh yeah.
to the near extinction of humans is absurd, honestly. Why is everyone got to? Why is the Scorpio got to be like the end of the world, even in this guy's scientific terms?
Dude, we've been catching shit since the beginning of time. Even the dinosaur Scorpios, they used to catch some slack too. So, I guarantee it's going to work out right after we make Scorpios great again. Something's going to happen during Scorpio season, and it's just going to get all ruined and started over again. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Lo. No, after you.
I don't really have anything. I was going to segue.
Let's switch theories.
Take it away. Yeah, take it away.
Let's switch theories. So, another theory in the Fermi paradox, which I think is the coolest because it's all about us, is that we're making headway, right? Like, we are the ultimate civilization, and we've crossed over these barriers. And there's a couple things that could be happening, right? We could be on a little TV box, and a superior race could be watching us closely for like sport. And once
that's the zoo hypothesis.
Yeah, exactly. And once we cross a certain line, then they just blow us up, right? That could happen.
And I mean, with all the sightings this year, it seems like a plausible one.
Exactly. And then another one is that, they always talk about trying to communicate. We send out radio waves. We actually recently found that you can track magnetic waves through space, and they think through that you can track gravitational waves. And a lot of scientists believe that superior races of intelligence and beings, that's how they communicate, because it's not a pulse, it's a constant wave the whole time. And we don't know how to communicate through gravity, obviously. We can't read it. But eventually, we will. It takes a tremendous amount of power, and that's a big point on accessing a basically telephone line to the galaxy, which I thought was pretty cool. Anybody can elaborate on that?
Yeah, maybe just curious, is that moving some large mass in order to create?
So what they found with the magnetic pulses that we track is they found it through neutron stars, I believe. I could be wrong. It's when two of them collided, you can feel it in the universe, or you can see it in the universe through waves. And it would be tracked through gravity. Basically, now this was nuts. You would have to harness the energy of a black hole and basically put the equivalent to what we have as a radio signal in there, and you'd be able to direct that energy in any way that you want. And we don't have the ability to read that currently, but they're speculating that other species do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's not something I've heard before either, but super interesting idea there. The one thing that my head goes to, though, is it doesn't seem like a sustainable communication strategy. You just got to find a new black hole every time you got to call Earth.
Yeah, that's a bit aggressive.
Something going off the communication aspect, and if we ever were to run into aliens and try to communicate with them, and the video that I was watching was explaining how difficult it actually would be to communicate with them, even though, like, obviously there are some theories and conspiracies that aliens helped build the pyramids, and ancient civilizations have been in contact with aliens and they've helped them progress technology within our world today. The way they described it is that it made it seem like that wasn't possible, just because, for example, if you take the smartest squirrel out there in the earth and we try to explain to the squirrel how our society works, it still would not be able to comprehend what we're talking about. And so if you take us and we see or try to communicate with an alien, it would just be, there would be so many differences that we wouldn't be able to really explain to them how our society works, or they wouldn't be able to explain what they know the world to be to us.
Right, and like on that level too with the squirrel, like let's say we're cutting down a bunch of trees, for example. The squirrel sees us cutting down all these trees, and most likely he's like, well, whoever's doing this, they are screwing me big time. And we're not doing it to kill squirrels, we're doing it for resources. So if aliens do show up, most likely they're here for resources, and we're going to get wiped out. That's another theory. That's another great filter.
Have you guys y'all have seen the movie Arrival, right?
So good.
Yeah, that's how I'm kind of thinking of it right now. Is there's just the language, just straight up communication barrier. That's the whole movie, right? It's like 2 hours plus of trying to communicate with this alien, and that's gonna be the big challenge, is how do you communicate with a species who might not, or definitely is not gonna have the same language, and then definitely does not think the same way humans do. Like we're making a very false assumption, I believe, if we think that other species out there think the same way we do and have the same biological composition that we do. Uh, Especially with, I don't want to segue to this theory yet, but like the colonization of other planets and colonization of a galaxy, just because humans inherently, want to pursue adventure and conquer new worlds, new things, doesn't mean other species out there have that same mentality. But we don't have to segue to that yet. I don't want to jump to that yet if we got anything to continue on here.
Yeah, I want to say something real quick. I don't want to, segue too much, but just kind of linking back to Fermi and like not having any sightings, and then also comparing it to, a squirrel. It wouldn't be able to understand how we live modern life. If you think about why there hasn't been any sightings or, official sightings and whatnot, you just think about our world that we live in, relatively, we understand like 3 to 4 dimensions. There's also like a pretty big thought process that there could be extraterrestrial life more closely located to us than we realize, but it's just in like a dimensional plane that we can't comprehend yet. Like if you had a 2-dimensional, ant, and you tried to show him an apple, a 3-dimensional apple, all he would see is just one tiny sliver at a time, and he would have no idea what the fuck was going on. So there's also some pretty big arguments, how real and plausible they may be. I don't know. I'm not a scientist or a physicist, but it's interesting to think that there could be just things that we can't comprehend that are happening all around us, just in a different plane of reality.
So is that a parallel universe kind of argument, or is that something
not
separate?
Necessarily a parallel universe, but universes stacked on top of each other, and we just only have the ability to recognize 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions if you want to talk about time. But it's very plausible in math that there are more dimensions than we have in our local universe, so they could be all around. We just don't know it yet.
Well, there are up to 10 dimensions, and I can find the link for the video, but there's an amazing YouTube video that's an explanation of the 10 dimensions. It's whether...
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I have that video. I'm going to send it in the Discord.
Awesome. Yeah, but it's whether we can traverse those dimensions is the the scientific holdup. We can't even move in time these days. So to even get to a 5th dimension or 6th would be crazy. But personally, I'm not super fond of the squirrel analogy, because squirrels are aware of humans and and who we are, whether they, understand. Obviously, they don't speak English, but I guess the Fermi paradox and thinking of maybe even just the zoo hypothesis, like we're more, if the aliens are humans, then we're more like amoebas, like on a cellular level, like so far from an understanding is at least how I take it, right? Like, or we're tardigrades, like, and they're, if you don't know what that is, look up tardigrades, they're incredible. But
Can you spell it for me, Carson?
yeah, TARDIGRADE.
Didn't they find those on Mars?
I was gonna say, aren't those little like bear-looking things that are
Yeah,
the
those
size
are
of
water
bears. Yeah.
This
Yeah,
thing's
but
straight
it's
out
just
like
like-
King Kong.
They are so like subatomic and far from an understanding in every single way. They don't even like live in the same like plane of existence, basically. Like, I guess they do if you use those words, but you know what I mean. Like, at least my interpretation of basically the theory here is that we have literally so far to go still in order to even come to contact.
Yeah, I kind of want to add one thing on that. So when I learned about Fermi paradox in school, the main variable in the equation from my professor's viewpoint was time. If you think about humans in an actual like advanced civilization timeline, we're 60 years into it from just being able to go to the moon, which if there is other life form out there, that's probably not that impressive to them.
Right.
And you think about that little water bear and where it's at and how long it would take to evolve up to something like us. The timeline is like the biggest thing. The universe is 14 billion years old. If you have a civilization that peaks and can travel, as far as they want to relatively quickly for 1,000 years old, or for 1,000 years in total, and then they get wiped out for some reason, the possibility of an overlap of two civilizations like that is still just so minuscule. So that's what they harped on a lot. And he was actually a believer that most likely there is not another advanced civilization out there, just because the timeline is just way too vast to have two incredibly advanced beings in the same timeline for that.
And that's something that Elon actually talks on. You've got humans who, our ancestors first appeared, they don't know exactly when, but it's between 5 and 7 million years ago. And Elon suggests that, even if we were to move not at the speed of light, because there's obviously no technology that exists for that yet, or even close to it. But if you were to move at, 20 to 30% of the speed of light, you could colonize the entire galaxy within about 10 to 20 million years by his estimates. So, knowing now that our ancestors first appeared 5 to 7 million years ago, there's got to be other species out there, you'd have to assume, that are older than we are, that have technology that is that much older than us, and even if they're not billions of years older, even if they're not hundreds of millions of years older than us, a few million years, that's enough time for advancement to begin colonizing some of the galaxy where we should be seeing them by now.
Right.
Isn't it incredible how a couple degrees of not learning and expanding our minds, we could just lose everything, right? The Egyptians, the Mayans, they were a pretty advanced civilization. They communicated with words and they communicated with pictures. They built things, and it's mostly lost years of knowledge. Domesticated dogs, for example. You're only 2 degrees away from undomesticating the dog. You lose the dog. It's in the wild. The domesticated dog has puppies in the wild. Those puppies then have puppies and then done. Those are wild dogs, right? And they don't know anything about humans if they never came in contact with one again. So we're very fragile, and we could lose everything in an instant. Everything.
Yeah, what's cool about that is also, if you think about, there was a max, like if there's a mass extinction tomorrow, 90% of us will most likely disappear, and the people that would survive are people that wouldn't be able to carry on all the advanced math and science. It would probably be people that are just like living off the land and like in the Amazon rainforest and whatnot. And that's like a couple leading theories. In the Discord I mentioned this guy Graham Hancock because he has the same idea of every like 12,500 years or so, there is an extinction like that. And that's his main belief is, when there are those mass wipeouts, the people that live probably had no idea that Egypt existed and all the knowledge they had. So they start over from level one. It's crazy.
Quick room reset right now. Topic. I think everyone's been here from the beginning for the most part. But Fermi paradox. Just basically stating how improbable it would be that humans are the only civilization out there who have ever lived, and the theories as to why we haven't encountered any other aliens. There's a lot of them, so we're discussing that right now. If anyone at any point has a question or they have something they want to add to the conversation, do not be shy. Raise your hand. We are calling up people to the stage all throughout the conversation, and it's just all in good fun, so don't be afraid to talk in here. Didn't mean to cut. I think Joe's the last person to talk. Can you reiterate your point one more time? And then I also want to get Ivan involved if he is here. I don't want to hype him up too much, but Ivan is, again, not trying to hype him up too much, the smartest person in the entire world. So would love to get him involved. Ivan, are you here right now?
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
I got you, brother.
Praise.
I got you. What's your theory?
My theory?
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to talk about the great filters and stuff. The Ivan paradox.
Yeah.
All right.
I think the best theory, I think it's definitely the one about if we got too advanced, then some type 3 civilization is just going to come wipe us out, because obviously they don't have competition. And then also why we haven't communicated with them yet is that we're just too primitive. Like, if they've seen there is a civilization that is advanced enough to explore galaxies, then how special are we?
And then type 3 is when you can harness the entire power of your galaxy, right?
Yes.
Can you give
type 2 is your sun?
Give the audience or give the listeners a quick rundown of type 1, type 2, type 3, and where we currently are.
So type 1 civilization is a civilization that can harness the entire power of their planet. So we're not even technically at a type 1 yet.
I think we're like a couple hundred years away.
Yeah.
And then it looked like we were 80%.
Yeah, I'd say 80% sounds pretty good. I think once we get to full renewable, that's pretty good, because then we're using wind and shit. But then type 2 is being able to harness the power of your sun using a Dyson sphere. And then type 3 is the galaxy.
Well, before you go on to type 3, the thought of a Dyson sphere is a cool thing too. I've never heard that term before. Basically wrapping for simplicity's sake, a massive solar panel around the sun to harvest all that energy and distribute it to the solar system.
Yeah, pretty sweet. You do
so solar power, though, Ivan, doesn't count as type 2, just using solar panels. Is that right?
Yeah, no. So it'd have to be every piece of energy that's outputted by the sun, we're harnessing it.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, and they say we can do that using a bunch of mirrors and lenses to kind of focal point it all into one mega solar panel. That would be let's say on Mars. And then type 3 is just every sun in your galaxy, and you're just kind of a beast. And I think that's about as far as it goes.
And that's where you start to run into the sub theory of the great filter, being that whatever civilization or species evolves. I brought it up yesterday when I posted to Instagram, but technology evolves exponentially. Like I said, it's been about 400 years since our beginning of space exploration, and look at where we've gotten, in the past 400 years, and specifically in the last, half a century to 3/4 of a century. That's where a majority of this has all happened, and now we're about to go to Mars. So it happens pretty quickly. But then you get to, okay, well, we've harnessed all the power of our planet, and now we want to harness all the power of our home star so we can become a type 2 civilization. That's a really tricky thing to do, obviously, and it can have very, very drastic repercussions if not calculated properly, right? So that would be the theory that supports the theory that these species, their technology evolves so much, but they're not able to I guess, get to that next level yet, and their technology evolution is actually what ends up destroying them, or they destroy each other with their technology, whether it be like they're trying to colonize the same planet as another species, and they basically just destroy each other with their existing technology. So like Star Wars kind of. Um, that's yeah, that's pretty much that. And I don't know where else to go from there.
Yeah, I think you're. Kind of for the whole Fermi on just Moore's law in general, that technology in every scenario evolves exponentially, and since it evolves exponentially, in theory, we should be seeing other civilizations so long as they're willing to interact with them.
We're actually reaching about the end of Moore's law, interesting enough, just because of temperature limitations. Like our transistors and our processors are so small now, they're like the microscopic level that we just can't put any more in there. So they're saying that we might hit the end of Moore's law around like 2030, which is kind of shitty to think about.
Yeah, because don't we not, one thing's for certain, we don't know our ability when it comes to developing something like a Dyson sphere. It's theoretically possible, but we don't know if like we can attain it based on our current projection with technology, right?
Yeah, so we'll have to discover an entire new thing of processing, which is what they're doing with quantum computing. Because once we get so small with processors, there's like this quantum tunneling that happens where bits just start flipping, and it kind of just fucks up the whole thing.
Yeah, and it kind of like you're talking about, theoretically it's possible to do that, and in terms of energy, it's possible to do quantum computing, but we don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, Ivan, we don't have the capability to do it for an extended amount of time because of the energy requirement that it takes. Am I right or wrong on that?
That sounds about right. I'm not entirely sure.
From my understanding, quantum computing and things of that nature are extremely energy tapping, and they drain energy like no other. They require massive amounts, and following along with that, Connor, it would be more metal than we have on this Earth, more metal than this planet was made of when it was formed 4 billion years ago as a cooling ball of magma. So while it's possible, it's highly unlikely due to, like you're talking about, processing, being energy limitations, material limitations, things of that nature.
Just wait till we find the vibranium, dude. Then we'll be good.
What'd
I
you
just
say?
want to
Vibranium?
jump in. I keep hearing people say theoretically possible to do several things, be it quantum computing, the Dyson sphere, I think it was. So I don't know much about Dyson spheres or anything, but I do know about theory and theoretical, and I'm being a stickler, but in the most technical sense, no, it is not theoretically possible to do those things, because to harness all the energy in the universe would be to create 100% efficient system, which is not possible.
Correct.
So,
I don't think it's in the universe, though, right? In the galaxy.
in the world and in anything, you can't harness anything completely.
But even still, yeah, there's no such thing as a perfect system. Tobin's right. There's no such thing as a perfect system, and ultimately, what Ivan was talking about boils down to efficiency. Efficient use of the planet versus the sun versus the galaxy, and yes, theoretically, to accomplish those things. Sorry, that's where I'm going. Theoretically, you could do those things not to accomplish the task of having a perfect system, but theoretically you could build those things not to accomplish perfection. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah. I'm just being a stickler about how we were using the term, but totally. I mean, the message stands true that, I guess someday we could have the ability to do this thing. Although I would be unsure about the Dyson sphere, just because they've done studies. Well, one, solar panels, the technology is honestly atrocious, but who knows? Someday it'll be great. But law of conservation of energy. If we're using that energy, it's being redirected, which seems kind of, oh, that's awesome, but it's actually not. They've done studies now that are recently emerging because solar is relatively new, especially solar fields as like a main source of energy. And they're finding everyone has this idea that, oh, it's like a zero impact on the environment. Oh, maybe some birds will get hurt, but that's about it. And that's actually not true. They're finding local weather is changing, and like bacterial flora landscapes are changing because that energy from the sun is now not heating the ground, the air, the microorganisms, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm very skeptical of the whatever it was, the solar sphere idea, just on those grounds.
Yeah, stop me if you guys don't want to go into it, but I had a question about the Tyson sphere. It's probably a stupid question, but if we're just entrapping the sun essentially in a solar panel, would that mean that we're also advanced enough to have our planet just completely heated by our own technology, or I don't know too much about the Tyson sphere is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think you can assume that if you can capture all of the energy the sun provides, then you can use that energy that's, like, let's say the Earth is only getting energy from the sun on 15 degrees of its axis, but you're capturing all 360. You can just, circumvent some of that to be going towards Earth.
The thought process behind it is you can use that energy to either heat the planet or fuel intergalactic movements, or these are all very way out there concepts, but you can take the quantity of energy, like Ivan said, if you're only getting 15 degrees on the axis and you can then all of a sudden get 360, you're managing to get, what is that, to 24 times the amount of energy that we get in a day from heat and solar energy. You could use for whatever you want constantly. So it's a wild out there concept, and it would do wonders, but it's highly unlikely. So
Well, I have a question for you guys then. So in terms of the zoo theory, you can kind of relate it to the simulation theory, where there's three possibilities. One, you kill yourself before you get to the technology of being able to explore elsewhere, whether that's mass extinction or you blow yourself up. Two, it's just physically not possible with any of the science. Or three, maybe we are in a zoo and we are in some Rick and Morty type TV show. Out of those odds, there's pretty good quote unquote math that people have done. What are y'all's opinions on that? Which one do you think is more likely?
Number three, I would love to opine on that, or rather, I would love to direct people to Descartes, the famous philosopher. He kind of coined this idea, the quote simulation theory. Now, back then he used dream because we didn't have simulations, we didn't have computers yet, so he chalked it up to a dream. But he does a pretty good job at explaining why it's kind of a waste of time theory, because here's the reality is, okay, fine, maybe we are in a simulation, maybe we're in a dream, maybe we're in a zoo, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of all the same thing. But for us to even be in a simulation or a dream, that still means there must be a physical universe for us to be simulated in. And the likelihood that the simulator somehow does not reflect any of the physical laws that are in the real world is unlikely. That would be very difficult to create a world that's the complete opposite. There's always going to be some continuity of laws. So even if we are in a simulation or a zoo or a dream, we still exist because we have to in order to be in that simulation dream. And the laws probably hold up in our simulation as they do in the real world, because you can't really disrupt the continuity of a law. That's why it's a law. And then more on that in Descartes for anyone who's interested.
I've heard it described, though, that if we were in a simulation, there'd probably be one thing that is very different from the quote-unquote real world, because that's what they're probably testing for, or doing the simulation to see what the difference is, right? They would make one law that's the case in their world totally different from the law in our simulated world, and it would be something ridiculous like you can't go faster than the speed of light, and they'd just be like, how does that affect this simulated world? And that could be any of our laws, we're not sure. And so I think that most of the laws would be the same, but there probably would be some type of variable law, and obviously we're not sure what it is, right?
Yeah, definitely. And then the interesting thing is, nowadays, science is the thing, I mean, that it's even political now. Oh, but, believe the science. Science is the thing. That's how we encourage people to think. But back in Descartes' day, yeah, science was huge, and it was kind of, the emergence of modern science. But back then, nowadays, we kind of worship science, like, oh, it's the highest thing. If science says, I mean, it's got to be this way. It's what the scientists say. Back then, while science was very important, empirical evidence was huge, they, air quotes, worshipped logic more. So when Descartes is talking about this continuity, he's referring more towards logical continuity as opposed to science. Yeah, sure, maybe they change parameters like, like the maximum achievable speed. But interestingly, nowadays we would say, oh my gosh, it's like the most important thing. But back in Descartes' day, he was saying, no, logic is so much more important than any of these physical parameters. So he's not so much speaking on the physical, although it's implied, but mostly the logical continuity.
Yeah, I would say the two go hand in hand, right? And Descartes was incredibly logic-based. So that's interesting. Should we talk about, SETI, kind of getting back to the Fermi paradox and how it basically launched? SETI, by the way, the acronym is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. That kind of has set off.
That's the Russians or the Soviets, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, it certainly began that way. Well, no, it didn't begin with the Russians, but it's certainly headed in that direction. I mean, yeah, we can, I guess skip the history, but basically the breakthrough listen is kind of Stephen Hawking's last masterpiece that, he left to the world, that they set up in, I think, 2016. But yeah, that was the Russian billionaire, Yuri something. And, yeah, they set up the breakthrough listen. So basically that's their, that's the world's latest and most advanced, actual search, as they would say. It's a SETI. It's a search for intelligent extraterrestrial communications.
I know recently, I think NASA's new study was in 2019, and then Oxford just released another recent study. And they, of course, every study thinks they did it better than the last one, but they, allegedly recrunched the numbers, paying more attention to the important variables. And at least these most recent NASA and Oxford papers now believe it is more unlikely that there is other intelligent life than likely, which is definitely a shift. I was wondering if, I'm not an expert on them at all, but I was wondering if anyone had read them or, any commentary on them.
I hadn't seen those, Tobin. Did you read into them enough to just see what the reasons were, just very high level?
Yeah, let's see. You could probably find the Oxford one pretty easy, and probably the NASA one too. But I remember at least the NASA one of the biggest things they accounted for wasn't just because a lot of the previous studies just looked at what are the odds that life emerges? And, that's very slim, but they said, but there's a heck of a lot of stars and planets, so, okay, it probably happens somewhere else. But what they didn't take into account was planets usually have in terms of the universe, a short period of time where at least carbon-based life could, withstand the conditions. So not only did life have to evolve, it had to evolve in the right time, and it had to evolve early enough in the planet's life cycle where the single-celled organism would have time to develop into a multi-celled intelligent organism. And they said when you're trying to stack all these things on top of each other, because they all happen at once. You couldn't have life evolve, and then the planet became habitable. No, it had to all happen at once. They do not think that now.
And Tobin, can you send a link or anything in the Discord for that?
Yeah, let me try to find the articles, and then I'll send that.
Awesome, thanks, Tobin.
So this is actually also a pretty common argument for the existence of God. Just like glancing at this article, I mean, they're basically saying that the way that life came about is so incredibly rare that it implies that there's the existence of a higher being who decided basically to allow life to occur on Earth when it was so unlikely everywhere else. I think though that an answer to that I've seen is that this is all assuming that life can really only occur in the way that it has here on Earth, right, with carbon-based life forms and everything else that we have on Earth, and obviously that's very rare. But if you take into account all of the other ways that life could come about in ways that we can imagine, and even in ways that we can't imagine, that it's not that unbelievable. And the example that they gave is that it's similar to measuring a puddle and saying like, wow, okay, it's incredible that the shape of this pavement that this puddle formed in fit this water exactly, right? But you're looking at it the wrong way around. It's just that the water filled in the space of the puddle, not that the puddle formed exactly to fit the water that's inside of it. So it's kind of an interesting analogy, but I mean, yeah, that gets into some really interesting arguments also about whether or not, if we are all alone, does that or does that not imply the existence of God?
Yeah, and then also, me and Mike were talking about this the other day, about how everything in space has a genetic code down to us, and like our double helix DNA is super similar to I don't know if it's not a galaxy, but it's something in space that's similar to it, right? Down to the trees of Earth that are similar to our lungs, for growth. If you zoom out on Earth, it looks like the planet's breathing. If you go do a time lapse over the year with the ice capsules melting and then refreezing, right? So that's another argument for there to be a creator, because everything's made up on a similar code.
You're referring to the double helix nebula, Connor?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah, also on that front, I mean, even down to smaller, the Fibonacci spiral, pretty much everything exists in the same pattern, or almost everything has the Fibonacci spiral, so that's a big argument that there's a creator, like, quote unquote, God, creature, something like that. But I think pretty wild. Creator belief, though, really has to be faith-based versus evidence or science-based or rationality-based, because if you're going to go the rational route, how do you ever get around the question, who created God?
Yeah, there is a faith element to it. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It's called a faith, so yeah.
But that's what God is, Slater, is that everything has a cause and effect, but necessarily there has to be, he's on the phone now, but there's got to be something without a cause, right? Because, you can't just keep going back forever indefinitely.
Yeah, so Aristotle...
What everything is without a cause, that, is the thing that we call God. I mean, we don't know what it is, but that's God.
That's pretty much exactly Aristotle's explanation. He calls it the prime mover. Obviously, yep. Aristotle predates Christ. But then, interestingly, Thomas Aquinas comes in, basically rebrands Aristotle, only instead of the prime mover, he calls it God. Interesting about the Fibonacci sequence, though, is it has been yet to be discovered in protein, which I think is fascinating, which is like the biggest, microscopic structure. It has yet to be found. I think that's very interesting.
Another thing about the Fibonacci... Go ahead, Connor.
I was just zooming in on the fact that he said largest microscopic structure, like a jumbo shrimp.
stuff along that line.
And sorry, guys, I dropped off right as Travis was responding to me because I had to take a call really quickly. Not to be a pain, but do you guys mind giving me like a 30-second recap of what the counter arguments were?
Well, Travis, don't do that yet. He's got to learn his lesson somehow. So moving on. No, Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that everything in the universe has a cause and effect, right? But there's got to be something that has no cause, and whatever that is, we call God, and we don't know what it is, right? But you can't just go back cause and effect indefinitely forever. There's got to be some first mover. And then Tobin brought up that this argument's been used by theologians for thousands of years, from Aristotle to Thomas Aquinas. So it's a pretty popular argument, but it doesn't really prove any type of God that we have thought of here on Earth, but it just proves some type of like first mover that we would call God, potentially.
Right.
Also on the Fibonacci sequence, also though, that's another argument that some people use for us living in a simulation. The fact that exists and a bunch of other like really kind of unique but beautifully simplistic like equations and stuff like E equals MC squared. Like it's so just odd that the universe, being as random and chaotic as we think it is, would have all of these natural laws that are so easy to write down in a formulaic code, and it's almost like someone designed it like we're in a simulation.
And then really quick before we move on and we respond to that, because I think I do want to give everyone a chance to respond to Travis. Again, quick reminder, anybody in the crowd tonight, if you have anything to add at any point, any questions to ask, just hit that little hand button down there. It'll raise your hand. We can call you to the stage. So we'll be inviting people up here all night. Don't be afraid to talk on here. It's not that scary. And then also, if you haven't already, tap the little greenhouse at the very top of this discussion to join our club. Teach us something cool. We do this every single Wednesday night. If you've never been here before, new topics every single week. So it's like a book club, but for learning cool shit. With that being said, room is reset. Go ahead and respond to Travis, whoever was going to speak next.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say really quickly, there is a show on Netflix called, I think it's called Connected. I'm not crazy about the host personally, but the topics are incredible. One of them is all about numbers and sequences, and they talk about Fibonacci basically the entire time. So definitely recommend watching that, because the amount of evidence or examples that they show to prove, that there's always a sequence is kind of crazy. And I think that can go both ways towards, is it a simulation, or is it in fact just in a world of, random sequence, there will always be a trackable pattern.
Quick full circle back here. Fibonacci sequence being as identifiable and identified as it is, and the largest theory about us being one of the largest theories about us being a simulation. Every 12,000 years, the repeatability, the traceability. Who knows? Maybe every 12,000 years or 6,000 years, the catastrophic event is because we're living in a simulation. Just a thought. I don't know.
I refuse to believe that. That's bullshit. And I got no evidence to back it up.
I was about to say, what you got there, money?
Fuck you.
That's when they reset us. They're like, all right, next set of variables.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all saw. So, because I pulled up your article that you talked about, Tobin, the Oxford study. That came out December 4th of last year, so 2020. But I don't know if y'all saw, just a few days after that, the opposite was claimed by the former Israeli spy chief. He came out and said that we have been in contact with aliens, that the U.S. and Israeli governments have been, and that basically we've been in contact with them for a while, but just the public doesn't know about it because of the obvious mass hysteria. So I feel like that's another potential answer to the Fermi paradox, is that we've been in contact with them. It's just that most people don't know it because our governments haven't let us know. Have any of y'all seen his claims or looked into it at all? Because I feel like all of these articles broke, and I feel like people haven't really talked about it that much, which is crazy.
That guy kind of got drowned out. I remember when that broke last year, and it felt like a really big deal to me, but then it just kind of went away. I don't know if that's some government influence.
Yeah, it's insane, and I don't know why it did.
I think we're getting real close as this is because we get more and more alien stuff, right? We had the 50s, 60s, 70s, we had Roswell. And at first, it was like, these aliens are going to kill us. And I think strategically, we've warmed up to it. The news comes out, whether you believe it's real or whether you believe it's fake, we're ready. We're ready to know whether it's a good or bad thing. And, if you look at some of our advances over the years, we've come a long way. Like, we're talking about, Tobin mentioned that this guy meant, I forget the name, but he referred to it as dream theory because the word simulation wasn't relevant at the time. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's insane. So we've progressed so fast that, the fact that they could be real and they could even be helping us progress is super interesting to me.
Kind of funny you say that. I hate to reference Joe Rogan. I love him, but sometimes it kind of throws credibility out. But he has a pretty interesting thought on that. It's like, so say, aliens are around and they're in, conversation with our governments or whoever it may be. If we went from zero information about them to just dropping like, here's a picture of an alien working with us, like the world would just go into a mass hysteria and people would be panicking. So a good way to warm us up to that would just be like, let people freak out about aliens, think they're real, everyone thinks they're fake, and then slowly over 20 years drop more, alien, UFO sighting, and now the Pentagon's releasing videos. So it's almost like they are in a timeline of, hey, get used to this because this could be a possibility. And it seems like the next logical step is, over the next course of however many years, if they are out there, then they dropped a big bomb on us that, yeah, they're here.
Now, I do want...
I agree with that because they've been releasing a lot of videos showing UFOs, right? Like, literally just flying objects that we don't know what they are with no explanation for the most part. Like, they don't even hazard a guess as to what worldly thing they could be. And I feel like the implication is that they have no idea and they might as well be aliens, as far as we're aware. And that's, straight from the U.S. government, from the U.S. military.
Also, I like the theory that... Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
I like the theory that we get, like, our modern, like, media portrayal of aliens, like, from the government as, like, a way of warming us up. So, like, you think of, like, the stereotypical, like, long head, big eyes, humanoid, and, like, we get that representation to warm us up to the idea of them.
So, in topic of actual, like, sightings, I don't know if you guys have listened to Commander Fravor's report. I think he was a Navy pilot for, 30 plus years.
Yeah, in Arizona, right?
Yeah, and so this sighting was off the coast of California. He talks about it in depth on Lex Friedman's podcast, and it's actually insane to hear. But, quick credibility check. He's a commander, been flying for like 30 plus years, has thousands of hours, and there's like this full-on detailed description of them essentially chasing down an unidentified object. When they get near it, it actively jams their radar and then shoots up to 60,000 feet in the air, then back down to the water in like less than a second. And that's like the first like real credible source that I've actually been like, okay, this guy, I don't think that this man would make this story up and possibly jeopardize his career in the Navy. And that's a really good one if you guys haven't listened to him, because it's actually pretty mind-boggling and really will be able to convince you that they possibly are already here.
And this is who, Jost?
So it's Commander Fravor. I believe it's spelled Fraver.
Are you in the Discord?
And Joe Rogan.
Are you in the Discord?
Yeah, I'll drop the podcast.
Yeah, throw it in the links and resources section in there. If anyone's not a part of the Discord, by the way, we've been dropping links in there all night. Go to my profile, follow the instructions. It'll take like 2 seconds. You can join our Discord and keep up with topics that you're unfamiliar with. We'll be dropping links in there all night to follow along with.
Something I wanted to mention about what Ivan said about the media and how we kind of get all of our perceptions on aliens and actually just anything in this society today from media and from the government. I do think it's, one, we don't even know what's in Area 51. They could have had an alien there, and they are, like you said, just lightening us up for the fact that they know that they exist, and they just are giving us the ideas so that when they do finally announce it, we won't be so taken off. And I've always been the one to say as well that I believe that aliens are already on this planet and we just don't know it. They're either known and they're being studied, or they're studying us and they're just walking amongst us, whether that's looking like us or looking like something we can't even see.
I think it's just cockroaches.
Yeah, my opinion is like if they're here, they're just observing us. Like they're like, what are these apes doing right now? Why are they pointing nuclear bombs at each other when they could, harvest that energy to excel their whole civilization? I think they're just observing. Like, are we gonna make the next step, or are we gonna blow each other up?
So then, what do you guys believe is in actually being held and happening at Area 51?
I believe it's just military advances. That's possibly they were using like older recovered UFOs, but I think for the most part that's where they just do all of our kind of undercover, like the stealth bomber was invented there. In my opinion, I think that's like a scapegoat for aliens, but I think it's just more of a militarized base where we're trying to stay ahead of, the Russians and the Chinese and whatnot. But also, I'm open to hear y'all's thoughts.
I agree with you, Jost. I feel like all of the, there's so many people involved at Area 51 and even just in the government more broadly, and so many of them are making, let's say like $50,000 a year up to maybe $100,000 a year. Like, if any of them came public with any kind of, certifiable proof that there are aliens there, and they would just make so much money. And the fact that they haven't, and there isn't any kind of whistleblower like that, I feel like just basically proves that they're not doing anything too crazy there.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that the U.S. government would be able to keep a secret like that for so long.
Trump wasn't one famous whistleblower. Bob Lazar, he worked at S4 is what it was called, but it was that. I mean, everyone knows Bob Lazar. General opinion is he's crazy, but he does have some pretty accurate depictions of like some of these videos that are coming out, describing it back in the 80s. So that's an interesting thought as well, just to kind of counteract my own point that I made.
What's his name?
Bob Lazar. He has a Netflix documentary, everything. It's actually pretty wild. His opinion, or what he says, is he worked in S4. He was a repulsion. I probably just butchered that word, but he's a specialist in trying to make aircrafts that can be more advanced than we currently have. And he said that there was like 3 or 4 different recovered UFOs, and their job was to back engineer them and try to figure out how to get them to work. And the main thing that he worked on was somewhat of an engine that was propelled by using gravity. And it's really interesting. But then he's like, yeah, it sounds science fiction, but if you went back to the Victorian age and gave them a nuclear reactor, they'd be like, nope, this is fake, this is wizardry. So it's interesting to think about it from that way.
What were you gonna say, Slater?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna segue if no one had anything. I know it's been brought up a few times, and it has to do with the multiverse theories out there. But I was reading something, and I also watched something where they explained the Big Bang theory and how all this matter, came up and created all of our galaxies, or our galaxy and the planets in the solar system. But with the makeup of all that, of the protons, neutrons, and everything that goes on into that, there's antimatter, which would then have you question where did all the antimatter go from the Big Bang theory if there is very little that scientists and physicists can see or have found studies of that suggests if there is the exact symmetry of the matter that was created, then there has to be some antimatter somewhere in this universe, scattered around, whether that's just floating around by little bits and pieces, or if there is, that opens up the possibility of that antimatter has created these multiverses of what we know life to be, but just in completely different, the opposites of what we know it as. And when you look at the makeup of how everything is made, it makes scientific and mathematical sense. It's just skewed a little bit. Like, for example, protons could be in this antimatter universe, could be twice or 10 times the size, and like the sun could also be heating up and stars faster than they would than it does for us, where things are working through the same basis and the same components that we know scientifically the universe works, but in the opposite.
So, Lex, to kind of go in on antimatter a little bit, I know you had a question back in there a little ways ago about where antimatter is. If you could just kind of rephrase that real quick. I was doing a little research, and I apologize I missed the end of that question.
Well, the question was, so they say that when you, for like the Big Bang, for example, there was all this matter that was created to give us the way our planet is and the way the solar system and the galaxy or the universe, our galaxy, was made up. But with that, there is they say an exact symmetry for antimatter with all that matter that was created, but there's so little evidence, and especially because it was so long before even the galaxy was created, that these scientists and these physicists can't really put a finger on where all the other antimatter has gone, because they can't seem to find it, and if they have, it's been very little. But there's supposed to be an equal amount of matter that was created with antimatter. So that means that there should be antimatter somewhere scattered in the universe, just either floating around or something that has collided with other matter that could, and it would only take one in those billions of antimatter to make that collision and that energy to produce a galaxy and planets like our own, but in just a completely different multiverse that we know it as.
Got it. Okay. And like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's interesting. I guess my 2 cents on that is that if the Big Bang is true and the universe is ever expanding, then the antimatter would essentially or effectively be out of reach, for tens of thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years, because if the universe is ever stretching, then it would take a ton of advancement to be able to reach proof of that.
Yeah, and that was what I was saying too. Like, obviously, since it was dated so back before we even knew what life was and there was even structure, you can't really put an exact model to that. But just something also related to antimatter, NASA was saying that they believe that the way that antimatter particles interact with matter particles, they annihilate each other and produce energy. So some engineers once speculated that an antimatter-powered spacecraft might be an efficient way to explore the universe. But NASA cautioned that, the huge catch with that idea was that it takes about $100 billion to create a milligram of antimatter. So while research can get on a lot less antimatter, this is the minimum that would be needed for application.
Yeah, and in terms of energy production, like we were talking about, is just not. I mean, it's attainable, and the reason why it dates back to that Big Bang is because when you look at it in terms of like the age and length of the universe, the Big Bang happened in about I want to say it was like a minute. Everything went from plasma to beginning to expand as particles. And while everything was a plasma, in those mere seconds after the Big Bang, that was when there was enough energy present to create antimatter. Antimatter met with matter, and that's kind of how and where that all ties in. To kind of relate that back to your question. But in terms of like where it goes, and when it annihilates itself, from my understanding, that's a pretty big basis for quantum physics. If it is it not, or and I'm not an expert, I don't claim to be, but quantum universe has upspins and downspins, and I'm going to probably say something wrong, so somebody help me out here. No? Okay. Good talk. So, yeah, quantum universe essentially has upspins and downspins, and then from there, I would imagine that there's some type of, I don't know. That's kind of where you lose me there, Lax. I'm not an expert, but if anybody in the crowd is that would like to speak up, we'd be happy to bring you up here.
I'm not an expert on quantum physics, but it's,
I missed that class.
Everything.
Yeah, I'm just a simple econ major over here. Love to talk about it and think about it, but my idea is it's definitely out there, and I think that's like the number one study point for a lot of astrophysicists right now, because they truly don't know anything about it.
Yeah, we had kind of touched on dark matter before, right? Because we talked about being able to communicate gravity someday, or basically similar to antimatter in the way that we don't know so much about it, and there's still so much to be learned. But basically, it can interact with visible matter through gravity. So we could do a whole another session on all kinds of matter in the universe that's really only being advanced upon in recent years.
So I guess a good segue would be, where do you think we will be in, say, 5 to 10 years in our research and our findings on alien life and space and universe travel?
I'm pretty sure NASA is putting a new telescope up in space that's going to be like, I think they're calling it the Planet Finder or whatnot. It's pretty much going to be the most powerful telescope, and I think there's going to be also radio wave detections in there. I think we're going to definitely make some big jumps here soon. But it goes back to the first thing that I think Connor said, what if they are communicating through a means that we don't even have the ability or even an idea of what it is. So I think there's a lot to be done, and I'm really interested to see where it's going. But I think a big start is that new telescope, or not telescope, satellite, I guess.
Well, it'll be interesting to see too if we can, colonize Mars, and how long it takes to do that, because that's that's really the first step. They really talk about it, like planet hopping, so to speak, is every planet you come across that's habitable, they inhabit it, and that's how you got to start with your solar system. You conquer your solar system, then you move on to the next solar system. But going from Earth all the way to the end of the galaxy is pretty fucking it's pretty tough to do. So it starts with one planet, and then it goes to another and another and another, and that's really the only tangible way that we could colonize an entire galaxy. And it will take us millions of years to do that, but you got to start with Mars first.
Got a rabbit hole here if anybody wants to go down it with me, unless later you had something to relate back to the topic.
I was clapping. Real quick. Did anybody else see Elon Musk outright say, "Yeah, people are gonna die. That's all right"?
Can you
It
was super proud in the news. He was getting interviewed, and he was like, "Yeah, I mean, people are volunteering to go to Mars. People are definitely gonna die. So I don't know what the deal is with me, people coming at me."
Oh yeah. So the idea is, once we get there, that's going to be the first step, and they're pretty much going to have enough resources and whatnot to live for, I think it's planned like 2 years, but we just don't have the money and the ability to go back. So it's a one-way trip for the first couple people. And I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, he was just like, yeah, you're gonna die on Mars.
So, Carson,
By the
go
way-
ahead. Go ahead if you had something to add here.
No, I just linked that CNN article because that is I forgot about that, but definitely. I mean, hard to argue with him, right? Like the journey being made and everything that needs to take place. He he ended it by saying like volunteers only.
Yeah, he laughed it off with the host, and they all were patting each other on the back. Or we're like, "What the heck is that
Right.
all about?"
Yeah, not gonna be fun. Go ahead, Lex.
I was just gonna say, we were just talking about exploring the galaxy, and I mean more specifically our solar system. But just to think about how we would be able to communicate or find other living life forms within our galaxy, and even trying to go farther than that to see possible connections and anything that gives a sign of life in other unreachable and unfathomable distances in the galaxy and the universe. It's just crazy to think that even the tremendous strides that we take, and say that satellite that Alex brought, where we can expand our search even further and more efficiently, I don't even think that we would have the capabilities to go farther than our galaxy to, because if you think that we're the only living life forms in the whole universe, that's absurd to think. And the fact of the matter is that there's obviously some living life forms even outside this galaxy and in this universe, and they are trying to do the same thing, or maybe they already have, but they still haven't done so. And it's just crazy to see how we're going to get there, if we ever do.
Well, it's an interesting thing you said there, Lax, and I do want to actually touch back on that in a second because I wanted to. Slater actually brought that up that we should wrap with that topic and kind of go around and give our 2 cents on that. One theory that I've also been thinking about for a while is that one, we know from the Big Bang the universe is always expanding, and so there are parts of the universe that we have never seen and that we're never going to see because it's expanding quicker than the rate of light. So imagine that there might be a species or a civilization out there trying to come towards our sector of the universe or our galaxy, but they're so far out there that it's almost like they're swimming against the current, right? Where they might be trekking along and just as fast as they're flying here, or however the hell they're getting here, the universe is expanding at a quicker rate, so they just can't make it to us. That's something I've been pondering.
Yeah, that's definitely true for the large majority of the universe. There's what's called your local group, which is really like mostly the Milky Way in our case, but that's really the only accessible other planets in solar systems that you could even conceivably, even traveling at the speed of light, actually effectively travel to and from. So it's definitely a lot of the universe is eliminated. But still, even with the majority of the universe eliminated, our local group still has a massive probability of other planets that really are in the right Cinderella zone from the sun to support life, and Goldilocks periods to support life as well. So it is, I think the numbers behind are like 4 billion planets or something like that are accessible, conceivably travelable to.
All right, so we are, I think, running out of Fermis to paradox right now. So last question, and we're going to get that, touching back on what Lax just brought up, 2 minutes ago. But before we get to that, really quick, after this, we are going to wrap our recording and we are going to head over to the Discord into the audio lounge for our nice little post Discord or post Clubhouse coffee room. We're going to discuss, wrap wrap up some thoughts on this week's discussion, and then also we're going to be setting next week's discussion topic. So if you want to give your insight or your 2 cents on what you want to talk about, it's a good place for you to do it. Friendly room. And then we'll also be setting, the week after that, and then the week after that one. So it's the next 3 weeks topics are going to get set tonight. So good coffee room to join. Again, that's going to be in Discord. Before we get there, though, also, sorry, one last plug. Make sure you tap that greenhouse at the top if you haven't already. Follow the club. And then, yeah, the question would be, do y'all, after this conversation, think that aliens are more likely to exist, or, they're more likely not to exist? What are your thoughts?
Yo, this is a super objective question, opinion-based, so y'all in the crowd who've hung in there for like an hour, that's like a long time, too. I always love when people chill to the end, which is dope. You guys should come up here and give your opinion on it, because your opinion's probably cool, and I would like to hear it, and I know these guys would like to hear it, so...
I'm calling Schwartz up.
I'm going to call pretty much everybody up, and if you
Can I tack onto this, guys?
But if you don't. Yep.
Go ahead, Travis, if you want to tack on.
If you guys do want to tell us what you want to hear about, we'd be really happy to hear. We're happy to please the people and give them what they want.
Is that for the Discord that you're talking about, or?
No, that's for anybody that wants to come up and voice their opinion on the question, but also like what other topics do they want to hear about? I'd be
Gotcha.
Kind of like a live poll.
Gotcha. All right, let's go to Schwartz real quick. Schwartz, you've been hanging in there. You've been a trooper. What are your thoughts? What's your take on Alien? What's your stance?
Mike, you wanted my take on aliens. It's real simple. Aliens are real. The government knows about it, and they're keeping it from us. I think it's blatantly obvious. Let's not overlook the obvious theory here. That's what's going on. I'm sticking to my guns.
Yep, I'm tacking on Duncan with that.
I agree.
They're here. There's a lot of things that just prove it in our face.
All right, does anyone want to take the stance that aliens do not exist?
I mean, I do. But
yes, Tobin, yes.
You guys gotta be kidding me.
Tobin, give it to us. Why don't they exist?
I mean, there's the studies, sure, that kind of counter the evidence that there's inhabitable planets, and of course there's also 10 studies that say no, it's super probable, and I don't know. I mean, I kind of I approach it from a somewhat philosophical and theological angle. Not so much the intelligent design argument, but I guess mostly theological. Then I think we're it. And that becomes more possible to believe when you do believe in a God, and then it, everything physical stems from that, and then it becomes really easy to accept that. But
also, my defense, I agree with the theological as well. And, even if there were aliens, it wouldn't prove that God doesn't exist. But the government's like a magician, right? They want you to look this way so they can do this over here. So I wouldn't believe anything that the government releases. And then, I had a really good point, but it's lost on me now. It'll come back.
Also, you gotta take into consideration what Tobin was saying and God, because I believe in God too, but and how He is created. But you also got to think on devil's advocate side that there are people theorizing what they believe, or there's multiple gods. So what makes you believe that there's not a God for aliens, where that's created an alien race or species, and are living just like us?
Ooh, who do you think puts up?
It came back. Real quick. Okay. They also call them UFOs, right? Unidentified flying objects. They're not called UAOs, unidentified alien objects. So all this shit flying around, it could all be from different countries, different governments, testing stuff. You really don't know. So just because they release UFO footage saying that it's a UFO, yeah, it's a UFO because they don't know what the fuck it is. Like, that's it.
It
Yeah.
could be
I think-
just the Soviets. Those dudes are always launching shit in the air.
Right, and like one thing, kind of got touched on in here, is like the government with these UFO videos, how now we're starting to release videos and confirmation and say, hey, like we have actually confirmed sightings of unidentified flying objects, and I think the natural question I feel like that a lot of people ask is like, oh, well, why is the government releasing this information now? Why? What are they trying to tell us? Blah blah blah. And the truth is, like, from a logical standpoint, it doesn't matter. Like the point is that like the United States government. And this is one thing I'm always kind of like joking about with my friend when we talk about aliens is like, I'd like to think. I mean, obviously, I don't know for sure that the United States government is pretty on top of technology and what's out there and what's available. I like to think, that we have a pretty good sense on what's available. And if we're getting confirmation from the top of the top that we don't understand something, like, how is that not alien to us in some way or form?
Yeah, so that's actually very addressable.
Yeah, bam, hit them.
For instance, one
Please
the
hit
government agencies do not communicate. The CIA does not talk to the military. They do, but there's lots of secrets, interagency secrets. And back in I think it was like the late 50s and 60s, we had the U-2 spy plane. And that would come up as a UFO all the time. And, of course, the government was like, oh, my God, we can't identify that. And people were saying, well, shoot. Basically, literally what you just said, we are at the pinnacle of technology, and if we don't know what that is, then good Lord, it's alien. 10 years later, the U-2 becomes obsolete, and they say, yeah, just kidding, that was our spy plane. We just couldn't tell you that. And other agencies didn't know that, too. So, some agency might have been honest. Yeah, we don't know what that is, and they're right. Yeah, they don't know that that's a U-2 spy plane. Same thing with the SR-71. They said, oh, my God, something just moved through the sky, and it was so fast. We can't make any planes that go that fast. It must be an alien. Oh, a couple years later, we declassify the SR-71, and it all makes sense. So, I think that's easily explained by it's just a sighting of a classified thing. The other thing is most of these unidentified flying objects, most of it is, they're caught on cameras or something like that. And cameras, just like us, I mean, I don't know, I at least this is on my Instagram reel all the time. Someone posts a cool optical illusion, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Well, cameras are just as susceptible to that. So, we see weird things on the cameras, and it could just be an optical illusion, even if it isn't just friendly technology that we don't know about yet. So I just think there are so many explanations that are infinitely more likely than, oh my God, another planet developed life. It was so advanced it achieved above light speed travel, and for whatever reason decided to come here and fly around and then get caught. Also consider that. So they have to be that advanced, but then screw up and get caught. I just think there's a million more reasonable explanations.
You know what, Tobin? We asked you to slap us, not to fucking murder us.
Well, while I agree with all of that, I do still want to play a little devil's advocacy. So, there's UFOs and there's UAPs, like unidentified aerial phenomenons, and a lot of those are actually not on camera, they're on radar blips, and there's a pretty famous area, I wish I had it in front of me, but it's up on like the northeast off the coast, and they are continuously like finding these blips that are like going through their military, of course it could be discrepancy from agency to agency and whatnot, but there's all these phenomenons happening of vehicles like moving at not speeds but patterns that are not possible. And I know it could be 10 years, they'll be like, oh yeah, that was our whatever, and it's doing this, but there's like these continuous blips on radars that are just pretty much fucking with the military up in the northeast on the water, and it's pretty interesting to look at because they've made up a new term for them, aerial phenomenons, because they're like, well, we have no idea what this is, and like you said, it could just be some advanced technology, but it's moving at patterns that have never been done, and it's like consistently being recorded. That's the thing that I believe is like when consistency happens. I'm like, all right.
This was a brain puzzle for me for a little bit, because I saw this, and me not wanting to believe in aliens had to rationalize it in my head. The explanation I came up with, which is totally theoretical, was this. It wasn't a single object moving, because it was accelerating and decelerating at impossible rates. My explanation for it was actually a formation of multiple objects that had achieved a zero radar cross-section at a certain angle, but as they maneuvered in a formation, one of these objects in a different place produced a radio cross-section. So it appeared to the radar that a single object had basically teleported, jumped, rapid acceleration, but in reality it was just changing cross-sections of multiple objects in formation. That's what I came up with, but I still think that's more reasonable than aliens, blah, blah, blah.
That's a phenomenal explanation. I don't really have an answer to that.
Think of like what we did to, we can go down this route. Colonization. When you go somewhere, you have a purpose and you colonize. Okay? Aliens aren't just showing up here for fun. There would be a purpose. And action would have
that's our purpose. How do you know that's their purpose? You don't. And just another thing to bring up, obviously the people in the government are the ones releasing these sightings of UFOs and UAs, whatever you said, and which also just makes, if you're playing devil's advocate, makes you think, okay, well, if they're fabricating this information, whether that's creating fake footage or fake stories and then releasing it to the public, it makes you just question, why would the government create a problematic and like thought-provoking things such as aliens and UFO sightings and then release it to the public if it weren't true? Because then you just create all these different problems within that and thoughts that you might not want the people to be even thinking about if it wasn't fathomable. So it just makes you think, if it's not real and they are releasing it, then why would they do that?
I agree, but also there's the possibility of just media diversions at all times.
Exactly.
Kind of what Schwartz had brought up, but yeah, I agree with you actually. So.
All right.
I know I'm kind of joining late into this one, guys, but I just kind of want to throw an idea out there too that I was listening to, around the whole conversation of UAPs was, this theory that, if civilization gets to a point where, expansion off planet becomes really the only feasible option, whether it be population growth or any other reason. But there's also another theory. It's like, you get to the point where you're, extraplanetary, discovering new planets. Is your purpose really colonization at that point? Or are you kind of going after, a bigger picture? Colonization seems pretty primitive in the scope of galactic exploration to me.
I guess, but that's what we're trying to do, right? That's phase 4, colonizing the entire galaxy.
Yes.
Relating it back to the Fermi paradox, of course.
Yeah,
because there would be no reason to leave and explore other than for knowledge, right? Increasing your ability and learning about these people. But that would mean that we have something to offer them. And, if you can travel at the speed of light and travel galaxies or travel within a galaxy, I don't know what we would possibly offer them other than a new home.
Well, even if it was colonization that they were looking for, they could just be like studying and learning, like you said, and they haven't, even if they haven't reached that point yet, where they are looking to colonize, that this could just be part of their early exploration and studies of how everything works and what resources we got and how they can utilize them.
colonize us.
I want to bring up. I just want to say this because we talked about the Israeli high up person. I forget what he did, but it's kind of a funny thought. But there is also always the possibility that they're just monitoring our progress to see how advanced we are, and if it is actually time to come in communication, like formal communication with us, and instead of colonizing, because in my opinion, if they do have the ability to get to us easily, and they didn't know we existed, they came to our planet to possibly make a second home, and they saw that we were already on it thriving. If it's that easy for them to go planet to planet and universe to like solar system to solar system, they could probably see us here and just go look for another planet. That's kind of my thought on it. Unless they could just wipe us out with a click of a button, but I don't think someone that advanced would be looking to do that.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and just one of my most favorite facts, which Mike, I told you this a while ago before I ever came on here because you were talking about something with space, but I don't know if you guys ever talked about it, but if you were, the theory goes, if you were 100 million light years away from Earth, which that is not even that far in the grand scheme of the galaxy, but if you were, you had a telescope to look at Earth, you would essentially be seeing dinosaurs because of the way that light works and physics, right? So just something to think about, too, when we say aliens are able to look at us or are monitoring us, it also kind of circumvents that kind of physics rule there.
Which is why they would have to be on Earth to do that.
Oh, here we go.
There you go. Hey, Mike, or Carl, rather. Do you got anything to add? You've been pretty quiet. You got any opinions on this?
I think he's just squatting. But
No, I'm here. I love the conversation, love the dialogue, guys. No opinions to add of my own of this matter. I'm just enjoying the conversation. Thanks everyone for talking.
Thank God you got a pretty face.
That's what they tell me.
Yeah, that I do remember you bringing that up, Carson. We have not discussed that. That's pretty interesting. And like you said, I think that was 100 million light years that you used, and you said it's pretty small. And like I said, if you went 20 to 30% the speed of light, that's what Elon says, you can colonize the entire Milky Way galaxy in about 10 to 20 million light years, or 10 to 20 million actual years. Now, in the grand scheme of things, like Carson said, the universe, we know the diameter is about 90 billion light years across, from pointing the telescope one way and then pointing the telescope the other way. So big universe. But yeah, in the grand scheme of things, 100 million light years is not that much time.
Right.
And if you look at the opposite viewpoint of that in perspective, if we were to look out with that same telescope for other life forms, we wouldn't even be seeing, if we did find something.
Yeah, we wouldn't be seeing present time. Exactly.
Yeah, they could already be gone, or they could be way more advanced than what we actually see.
Isn't it?
Right.
It's crazy to me. We talked about it very briefly. It's been 400 years of space exploration. 400 years ago, Galileo points the first telescope ever at the sky and is able to see, Jupiter and see the moons around Jupiter. And now, 400 years later, we're getting ready to literally launch. Well, we're already launching ships into space. We've been doing that, but launching ships into space with such precision that we're gonna be able to go to Mars and bring human beings there. And 400 years ago, or 420 years ago, I should say, people wouldn't even be able to even fathom that. They don't even know what Mars is at that point. So pretty crazy.
They literally were killing people for saying that the Earth was round back then.
Right.
Well, that's crazy.
So
Yeah, you go, Alex.
I was just gonna tie that to back to the Fermi paradox. If you actually look at the equation, that right there with the the use of telescope looking backwards in time, that's one of the main arguments that says if you just look at it on paper and from a purely mathematical or scientific view, it's a paradox because it seems like it should obviously have other life forms, but then you look at the timeline of those civilizations lining up at the same time, and actually being able to recognize that they're still there, because you're looking into the past, is like 0.00001. It's just very, very unlikely that they can line up at the same time to where you can actually see evidence of them without them actually showing up at our doorstep.
I would agree with you if there was only a handful of planets, but if you look at like the estimation of how many planets there are, then that figure increases exponentially, right?
And something I think is interesting as well, and maybe I'm just like a high about or something, but they say Mars is like one of the only ones that could have possibly planets in our solar system that would have lifelike forms, or the possibility of lifelike forms, such as ourselves or some kind of adaptation of us. And I don't think we have the technology available to fully grasp what's actually on the planet and what is actually considered a living life form. It's not like we are monitoring every single bit of the planet, let alone the other planets. And I believe that even on the other planets in the solar system, and maybe there's science that I just haven't read or something that would prove me wrong, but maybe there isn't a life form that is somewhat like us, but planets like Neptune or Jupiter, like the gas states, Earth states, planets, where they wouldn't have that. Maybe there's something that we just can't see, and there's life forms that are different, so different that we can't even comprehend, but they're on there, and we can't even go on the planets to even really know.
So to comment on that part, there's actually been some scientists study exactly that. Okay, we're carbon-based life forms, but hey, couldn't there be something, a different element-based life form? And they ran experiments to see if, different molecules might be able to make the molecular machinery that is necessary for self-propelled reactions and whatnot. And I don't know, maybe 6, 7, probably more, 8 years ago, someone came up with the arsenic-based life form, and it seemed to kind of check out. Oh my gosh, maybe we could have an arsenic-based life form. And then they sent the article for peer review, and it somehow passed peer review and got into Nature, and it was destroyed by every scientist ever. But there are people trying to explain or explore if there's other options for molecular building blocks for life. And perhaps it's a horrible lack of imagination, but we have been able to come up with nothing just because of the molecular properties of, other molecules. I mean, carbon is very special, and that's why life, came out of it, because, as far as our scientists can imagine right now, it's the only one that works.
Oh yeah, Lax knows all about carbon. Really quick, I am going to do a hard stop here because this is sounding like conversation that can easily carry over into Discord. That's typically what we talk about. Again, I do encourage y'all to come, join us in the Discord for our coffee room discussion, so we can set next week's topic and the next 2 topics after that as well. But before we do hop off, this is a nice plug here. We have officially exactly what the world needed another one of, a podcast now. So you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Google Podcasts, waiting for the Apple Music approval. Sorry, Slater, gonna have to wait on Tidal. I have not found a solution for that yet, but you can listen to these episodes not only on YouTube now, but also on Spotify and Google Podcasts. And we have our first sponsor also. So that is a pretty dope development from where we started in our first space discussion like 7 weeks ago now. So, round of applause to y'all. Definitely love doing this every week. Definitely learning something, new every single week. That was the point of this. And yeah, let's set some dope new topics to discuss. Honestly, something controversial wouldn't be a bad topic for the upcoming weeks, but we could talk about that in the coffee room. Yeah, Connor, if you have anything you want to add, now is the time to do it. Otherwise, I am going to end the room, and I will see y'all in there. Again, I would definitely encourage y'all to join us.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike summed it up pretty well. Thanks everybody for joining. Always love this stuff. And cheers. Cheers to you guys. Cheers to all the value that everybody brings.
Cheers.
Always fun.
I just checked out the podcast on Spotify. It looks great, Mike.
Awesome. Listen to the ad read. First ad read ever, dude. Was a little jittery, but we got it down. Carson, thank you for joining us, brother. Always love having you on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Always fun to hear everybody's thoughts, and even the crazy turns that the conversation takes are definitely entertaining as well. So.
Oh yeah, we love a good rabbit hole.
Yeah. I don't want to say who the new sponsor is, but Flamin' Cheetos are amazing. So.
All right, fellas. Carson, if you have anything you want to say, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh yeah, no worries. Take care, guys. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.